It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. Our last conversation was about how hard it is to trace one bad head of lettuce through a supply chain that can stretch thousands of miles. Here's a smaller question. What if your lettuce came from down the block? Amanda Brazel grows food on Detroit's west side on land where houses used to stand. They co-founded a farm and design studio called Fennigans, where fresh veggies and fruit sit on a folding table under a sign that reads, "Free Produce." Brazel came to that table by an unusual route. Before growing sunflowers and tomatoes, they studied dangerous pathogens and emerging disease at Georgetown. So they can speak to the parasite and the pea patch in the same breath. Amanda Brazel, welcome to the Metro.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
And we want you to join the conversation. The phone lines are open. What are you doing to keep yourself safe right now? The number is 313-577-1019. Okay, Amanda, 2 heads of lettuce.
Okay.
One comes up through the national supply chain. Investigators are combing through right now. The other comes out of the ground at Fennigans this morning.
Okay.
Trace how differently those two reach my plate.
Yeah, I think when we're thinking about, what's at Finnegan's or maybe what is at other local farms through the city, you're picking that up from the person who grew it. You know exactly where it came from. You can ask different questions about how it was washed, prepared, grown, how it's protected, those kinds of questions. It's a little bit harder to do that when you are grabbing something from the grocery store, or maybe, for those of us who maybe don't have access to a grocery store, you're getting that lettuce from, let's say, a Wendy's or a McDonald's in a salad.
Or a Taco Bell,
Yeah.
which has stopped serving lettuce during this outbreak.
That's a good idea.
What you're saying, Amanda, is on your land, you know every bed. What grew there, what water touched it, whose hands were on it. So all of that becomes a bit of a mystery for us the moment that a vegetable enters the bigger supply chain. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Kind of, yes. So I would say that we have, thousands of farms across the United States. And when a farmer is taking care of that food, even if there are 100 people out there picking that food, farming is I consider it a spiritual act. So you are paying attention to your food. And I want to make sure that folks understand that, our big box farms, those who do supply folks for thousands of miles, they do have those opportunities to take those preventative measures, and they do take that care in looking at their produce. When I'm thinking about the food that I'm growing, it's only 1 or 2 people out there. So if I didn't touch it, I know who did. So it's a little closer up. It's more intimate of an experience in that process.
Why is it spiritual for you, farming?
I would say because of my direct connection to the earth. I am putting my hands in the soil. I am paying attention to the sun. I'm paying attention to water. I am literally wielding all of the elements to make sure that this food is grown. I also do this for community benefit. So for me, this is essentially my ministry, right? So this is what I have decided to give to community. This is my love letter back to community. And so all of that is heart-centered work, whether I am snatching a tomato hornworm off of my plants or I am handing produce to the woman down the street. So
it's hard for me to throw a pushback question at you now after that lyrical beauty,
That's
Amanda
okay.
Brazel. But if we were all to grow and eat more locally, I'm imagining this is going to be a lot more expensive, no?
It can be. In some instances, it is more expensive. In other instances, it's not, because you're not paying for the transportation costs of food. You're not paying for, maybe the distance that this has to travel in order to get to you. When I'm thinking about local food, sometimes it does come at a higher price, but it is because you're paying for that intimate connection with your food. You're paying to know who know the person, look the person in the eye who's growing your food. You're paying for them to support their families, for them to come to the farmer's market, for them to travel to you, to wash the produce, to grow it. So when I think about that, I'm like, yeah, we absolutely need to be paying the people who are going to do that work. So it can be a little bit more expensive, but in some instances it's not. It can be pretty comparable, especially when we tap into like our Detroit community markets. There's a different, if I'm not mistaken, there's a different farmers market happening every single day in the city of Detroit. If you look at the Detroit community market map, I know the one for my neighborhood is today. So I'll be going there after work. But yeah, when I think about that, I think about, our ability to know our farmers and how close up that is. And yeah, if it's $1 more, then I'm willing to pay it if I have it.
This is something I want to emphasize here that you're pointing out, the ability to know your farmers. And it's one of the reasons that I cherish the opportunity to go to Eastern Market on the weekends and be able to talk to so many different farmers. What do you think are some of the best questions for me to be asking those farmers about the food that I'm thinking about buying?
Yeah, you can ask them, when was it harvested? What do their irrigation practices look like? And now I can say, as a farmer, to be interrogated in that way can be kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
Only because you're just like, I really want to give you this, and, to go through the list, it can be a lot. But I think it's worthwhile to answer those questions for folks who are trying to patronize you. So
I know what you're talking about, though, because sometimes I talk to folks and I can tell right away, oh, you spend a lot of time with your hands in the earth, not talking to folks. And this is not your favorite thing to be doing right now, is talking to me and explaining your practices.
Yeah. However, I will say, though, it is an exciting thing. And one of the things that I do like to nerd out about is the food that's growing on my farm. So yeah, asking folks, how was this irrigated? When was this harvested? How many employees do you have working in the space? Have you been impacted by, any of these foodborne illnesses that are going around? Asking those kinds of questions is necessary.
We brought you in because we've been talking about food safety. That's what this has been about so far. But local food lets you know where your food came from. I realize, though, you push it further to sovereignty, not just knowing your food, but controlling it. Mm-hmm. For a neighborhood that's lost its grocery stores, how are those two, safety and sovereignty, the same fight?
Access. It comes down to access. It's hard for you to make decisions about something you don't have access to. So if you are relegated to what is just given to you, then it's hard for you to make decisions about where it's coming from and how it's produced and how it's taken care of. So yeah, it is the same fight. Sovereignty gives us the ability to have autonomy in our food system and to make choices. But you can't do that if you, again, don't have access to the thing in the first place.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. My guest is Amanda Brazel, who co-founded the Detroit Urban Farm and Design Studio Fennigans and sits on the city's Food Policy Council. Brazel didn't come to the soil through farming, though. They came to it through the study of how disease moves and a question about who gets to eat. You can join the conversation. The phone lines are open. What are you doing to keep yourself safe? The number is 313-577-1019. Amanda, I realize you could be in a lab somewhere studying outbreaks. You have a master's in, it is a mouthful, biohazardous threat agents and emerging infectious diseases and agricultural defense. Yes. Instead, you came home to grow tomatoes on the west side. Talk a little bit more about that. I mean, you said this is your ministry. This is what you've been called to do. Say more.
Yeah, I was in a space where I got to see from the top down and back up again how the food system works and what measures are being taken to protect our food, what's being taken to protect those who are consuming the food. Agricultural defense goes into so many other avenues besides food safety. And so looking at how folks are treated when they're displaced, how do we secure clean water and clean, soil or spaces for people to actually eat food, clean food when there has been some sort of a natural disaster. I think about, not to be too morbid, but if there were, a large flood or a hurricane, and there are deceased people, right, in the water or, in and around the area. If you're thinking about people who have not been able to use the bathroom, right, near a bathroom because it has literally been ripped up from the ground, right? So now you're dealing with, fecal matter in water. You're thinking about any other disease that could be there. And so a lot of my background is securing that, right? Where do you even start in a situation like that? And I'm the person to call to figure that out.
I mean, without taking us too much into the weeds here, where do you start?
Well, you actually started in a couple different places at once. The first thing is to figure out what the source is, right? Like, is it the water that's contaminating? Is it, just because people are sick and are all in the same area? So a lot of it is contact tracing. And that is a huge point in our food system, even what we're going into now. Being able to trace back where something came from is like the first thing that you're trying to figure out.
With that,
and what it is.
Sure. I mean, with that said, what are your observations about this outbreak, the Cyclospora outbreak in Michigan? I mean, has this really concerned you that we are climbing and climbing and climbing now with thousands of cases? We were just at hundreds of cases a week ago. What are you thinking with the background that you have and the lack of clarity that people so desperately want right now?
Yeah, I think this is kind of, it's a really interesting moment because I did come into this work to be able to be that median between our, regular folk who are just trying to eat and those who are in positions of power who can make decisions about where our food is going and how it's taken care of. And so, yeah, when I'm looking at all of this, I think about, there is a baseline fear, mostly because there are people in my life who are immunocompromised or young children, or just, a friend I don't want to see get sick, right? So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about, how this can be addressed, how it can be traced back. I know that there are so many more cases. I have my own speculations about where these things might be coming from.
Do you want to indulge us?
Oh, more so in that it feels like it's coming from a space where food is being distributed on a really wide level. Like if this was a small farm, let's say, Northern Michigan small farm. I work with a lot of small farms. They're able to just pick up that food and take it directly to where it needs to go. When I'm thinking about, maybe a distribution center that is aggregating a lot of food from a lot of different places, a lot of farms that have already gone through these checks and balances and that, on their produce, this is not being detected. Well, then to me, it seems that if you've got, let's say 10 farms and they haven't detected this in their space at all, but then you're noticing that all of these people are getting sick and you're able to trace it back to a facility that is washing, chopping, and bagging, lettuce or leafy greens, then it goes back to, okay, well, then it must be the facility or the way this food is being distributed, not necessarily the farm where it's being grown. So, I don't work for the CDC. I know they've done a lot of, tracing back, but I think when I'm thinking about the fact that so many people on such a wide scale are being impacted, it feels like it's coming from a place where the food is being centralized and then treated and then put out.
Okay, so let me try and bring this back home if I could here. Yeah. So what you're saying essentially is that because we are talking about such a huge supply chain,
yes,
it's really difficult to pinpoint what the source is. You have your suspicions of what it is, but this is in contrast to buying local. And this sounds to me like it's perhaps why you might in some ways disagree with our last guest who works in public health and says that buying local won't really make that much of a difference in terms of keeping people healthy. Am I getting that right? That you would push back on that for this very reason, that we're able to have a shorter supply chain that we can trace when we're buying local?
I think I would push back just a little bit, just like a little press. Not fully, because the previous guest knows exactly what she is talking about. I want to make that very clear. I would say in terms of contact tracing, though, right? If I'm only eating food from the farmer's market, I'm only getting food from a local grower, I know that grower, or even let's say I'm only eating the food straight out of my garden, right? If I get sick, I know where it came from. And so when I'm thinking about contact tracing, it's not necessarily going to make it safer for you. It's not necessarily going to completely mitigate, your ability to consume something that has this parasite on it. But it does give you a way to figure out how you got sick, if you got sick, if that makes sense.
And thereby it gives you some level of control, and thereby you're taking back some food sovereignty as well.
Well, I would say you're just in your autonomy, right? Like you get to then decide who I'm going to get this food from, which farmer I'm going to support, what farm I'm going to support. That's the sovereignty piece there, is even being in a position to make a decision. Am I going to go get pre-washed, cut up, lettuce from the local grocery store, or am I going to get it from a farmer's market? Or, that in and of itself, being able to make that decision is a privilege.
You work on food policy for the city and the state. Right now, we invest in a lot of corn on big industrial agricultural fields, and soy and so forth. If more of us were eating healthy, nutritious food locally, what would the state and federal government need to be investing in?
Continued food safety practices, regardless of where the food is coming from. That needs to be a priority. I absolutely agree with our previous guest in that it's a small amount of money that it's going to take to genuinely invest in strengthening our food safety system. It is not a big, giant thing that's going to take hundreds of billions of dollars. It's completely blown out of proportion. I think that, we have, even if we were, everyone decided to eat local and it was this big magical world, right?
Your dream, yes.
Well, maybe, right? Because I still, I support all kinds of farmers.
Sure.
But, when I think about that, it's just, we would still have to, there still needs to be a system in place at the state, at the city, at the federal level to make sure that food is being inspected. We've seen a lot of federal cuts in the last 2 years once we changed our administration. And with that, we saw a lot of food safety, food regulatory agencies see a lot of cuts to staff. So it doesn't just mean that there's not a person sitting in a lab to detect a pathogen. It also means that there's not a person available to go to a farm to talk to them about the practices that need to be done. It means that you don't have a person to come and test the irrigation system and the water and all of these things. So a farmer can do everything that they could possibly do to make sure that people aren't getting sick. But if there isn't a system of checks and balances, or that system has been incredibly defunded, then there isn't a person to come and do those necessary checks, whether it is someone coming to a local farm, because even in our urban farming, there are strict food safety practices that must be upheld. I don't know any farmer in the city that's going to tell you different. So if, we still need the people to do those jobs. Those are not, they're not just like random people sitting in labs playing with pipettes. They are keeping us safe at every level.
Amanda Brazel is the co-founder and creative director of Finnegan's Farms in Detroit, a board member of the Detroit Food Policy Council, and a policy specialist with the Groundwork Center. Amanda, thank you so much.
For sure.
It's the Metro on WDET. Coming up, our state's population has been stagnating. Getting people to come here can be hard. Our next guest has some solutions. That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.